It's May 11th, 2023. This is Rook. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 263 of Rook. What is more important than the freedom to think? I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam dostan aziz. Durud bar shoma. What is more fundamental than the freedom to think? If the global attention to what is going on in Iran has become subdued, let's not mistake that for atrocities and human rights violations being any less crude. Now, let's be clear, your life can be taken away for simply having a belief, a thought, an idea that isn't sanctioned by the government. What is more important than the freedom to think? Oh, this isn't new. Those of you around the world who are familiar with this theocracy will be suggesting that this is not a surprise, but nor is it something we should ever normalize. Consider how insane this is in the 21st century. 2 men were executed this week because they didn't believe in God, or the right God. They were killed for exercising their ability to think. Their lives were taken away because they refused the Islamic drink. Of all the anti-democratic madness we've seen over the last 45 years in the country of our ancestry, corruption, dysfunction, autocratic rule, the suppression of women, clothing laws, cultural bans, social repression, and the denial of dissent and assembly, is there anything more insane than being killed for holding the wrong belief about whether there is a God? What is more fundamental than the freedom to think? Youssef Merdad was a father of 3. He's now dead. Sadrullah Fazlizadeh was the caretaker of his mother. He's now in a grave instead. They were originally arrested in 2020 for blasphemy, for a Telegram channel that criticized superstition and religion. Their families say their confessions were extracted under duress. They were held in solitary, denied family visits and phone calls. And this week, as the eyes of the world have shifted away from Iran, they were killed as part of a macabre new tradition. It's outrageous. These men didn't act out violently or steal or extort or harm anyone else. They made the mistake of suggesting that they were atheists. They died for having beliefs. Is there anything more important than the freedom to think? We live in a global cultural moment where opinions are under attack in various forms. Conform or be cast out is what we are increasingly seeing in social media. Toe the cultural party line or be canceled and resign. But in Iran, it is, of course, next level. Think the wrong thing and we'll cut you with a knife. Don't subscribe to our religion and we'll forcibly take your life. And this has been the case for over the last 45 years, a period that has seen people of different religions and beliefs flee the country that was once more diverse and welcoming. And this week, it could not be more plain. The government in power only grows more vicious and more insane. What is more fundamental than the freedom to think? Here's a hint: nothing. Here's hoping one day soon, Iran returns from the break. Coming up, a new episode of Rook featuring Dr. Mitra Mohamadzadeh on the importance and primacy of grieving, and Taimaz Bagbani on his remarkable story of resilience. Plus the Roqe Roundup with Pegah. This is Rook, episode 263, Grief and Recovery. Welcome here. Or welcome. Here we are in the Rook Studio. Smart Pegah is with me.
Hello.
First time I've done an essay in a few weeks.
While. Yeah, but it was wonderful.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that, actually.
I don't know if there's anything wonderful about.
Well, no, I mean the essay was wonderful.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it and really made you think.
The freedom to think.
The freedom to think. That's right.
I feel like the freedom to think. Can you imagine that we keep thinking we're progressing? Mm-hmm. You know, our default, I believe, as human beings, is to think that over time we get better, we learn, we grow as a species, and we're now in the 21st century, and what is under attack is in so many different ways, and in different, even in the West, I would argue in some ways, the ability to just have a belief.
Yes.
And this week, people being killed in Iran for suggesting they don't believe in God.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, and that's why I was saying your essay really made me think about that. It made me question, exactly that.
And I guess, again, I know some of you people out there are going, well, of course, duh, we know this. Like Iran, this is it's a religious state, and it's, if you do something blasphemous, then this is the result. But the point is, we have to remember how insane this is.
Exactly.
Right? That it's not normal. It shouldn't ever be normal. It becomes normalized because people just get so tired of it after a while. That what can we say? What can we do? It's the reality. They get badbachtim Iran, all of that stuff, right? Here we are starting off the show on a
just jumping in.
Jumping right in. Hope you're doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. We are on our ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. Pegah, Taimaz Bagbani, right? Yeah. Thank you, Sabi Roham. Taimaz Bagbani is coming up in the Rook Studio later in the show. Somebody I've been aware of and aware of his story for many years, in fact. An athlete, a rapper now, but he's still only in his early 20s, but he's got such a story.
I can't believe his story. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Today's episode is about resilience. I mean, the whole show regularly seems to be about resilience, the plight of Persian people, but Taimaz certainly is an extraordinary example of resilience in that he was on course to be a professional football player, soccer player,
right.
Really, really talented young soccer player when he was a kid. And then he gets cancer, leukemia. Then he gets cancer again. Wow. Then he gets cancer a third time, and is told that at the age of 14 that there's no point even having any more medical treatment because his days are numbered. Based on his own strength and belief, and his mom as well, he fights for his life and overcomes it. About 2 or 3 years ago, he actually came out of a wheelchair. He's now walking and strong and talking and rapping. And so Taimaz Bagbani, the Iranian-Canadian, will be joining us here in the Rook Studio. Before that, in just a little bit, Mitra Mohamadzadeh.
Yes.
She is a grief recovery specialist, and she's going to join me here on the importance of grieving, on how we grieve, the process, why it's important to recognize that we need to grieve, not just personally in terms of all the personal loss that Iranians have felt for a number of reasons, and that we all feel in our everyday lives, losing a family member, going through a terrible breakup, losing our job, having to move from another country, whatever. But the grief that we are now experiencing globally as an Iranian community in weeks like this, where if you even want to pay attention to the news, because sometimes people just want to turn it off, you're dealing with people being executed and killed, and that grieving process, how we do that both individually and collectively. Mitra Mohamadzadeh is here to talk about that.
I'm actually so excited to hear her speak about that, because I feel like also culturally we have a weird relationship with grief. Like, I'm sure it'll be interesting to hear her insight on it.
What do you think our relationship is with grief?
I don't know.
Culturally?
I mean, I think we pretend like it doesn't exist until it absolutely almost slaps us in the face. Like, I feel like, and even on a personal experience, it's not something that you ever think about or talk about within the upbringing of being Iranian, I almost feel like. And then, but it's inevitable. I mean, it's one of those things that,
much like most of our emotions and personal subjects, I feel like it's swept under the rug. I feel like it's suppressed culturally, like don't talk about this, and I think we're terrible at grieving. I suspect she's going to say that. In fact, I probably know she is, because I've been researching her ideas. But we also have these weird rituals around it too, like we're supposed to emote and cry and wail at funerals, but then, we've got our own version of stiff upper lip, don't, look tough and believe in the future. And I don't know. Maybe one of the fringe positives of the last 8 months has been the idea that people have been open about how they've been crying, how they've been mourning, how they've been expressing sadness or grief about what Iran has been in the last 45 years, the plight of those kids who've been killed, all of that. I mean, maybe that's
the dialogue around it, especially, I think, has been the silver lining, I guess, to be able to actually have those conversations. Because definitely prior to this, I don't think we did.
I still don't know how. I still think there's so much trauma. If there wasn't already trauma, revolution, war, immigration, whatever. Now, I mean, and as Tymaz Bagbani was saying last week, the trauma of unmet expectations, you know, all the euphoria of October and November, we're going to win, the regime is going to be gone in a few weeks, which was perhaps always unrealistic. Now it's the trauma of, shit, nothing, you know, we're still back to square one.
Yeah.
We're not really back to square one, but in the eyes of some folks.
It's so funny that you say that. I was talking to a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in weeks, and he was saying, you know, how are things with Rook? I haven't caught the last few episodes, things like that. And I said, okay, you know, things are great. We're, you know, still going strong and talking about it. And we started talking about the revolution. And then all of a sudden he just said, you know, I'm so done with it. I just feel so drained and so depressed and defeated, and, you know, all these emotions of just, I don't know, hurt.
Listen,
trauma,
I'll be honest,
like you said.
I even writing today's essay and preparing to do it, I was thinking, you know, should I do this? Because I know that we've heard from people in our audience, okay, that's enough, you know, let's move on. We're really tired of the talk about, you know, our problems, which are, it's put in the category of being political, but I don't actually think this doesn't fall in the category of political, organized politics or parties or opposition leaders or any of that for me. This is about just talking about, man, you know, people getting executed and human rights. How are we supposed to ignore that?
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, how are you doing otherwise?
After this conversation?
Yeah. You were fine earlier.
I was fine, you know, I mean, I think it's still the same thing we've been saying for months. There's ups and downs.
Did you watch the King Charles coronation?
I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I definitely saw highlights and I read news.
Why didn't you
about
watch it? Why didn't you weren't excited to get up early in Toronto time? And
I mean, I say I didn't watch it, but I was forced to hear it because my sister was up whatever time
she was into the...
Yeah, she was watching it. My sister's very much into it.
I don't know, man. I've lived with monarchy all of my life. You know, as a little kid, the Shah, you know, we had a king, and then the Queen. I was born in England, so I had the Queen, and then came to Canada, and she's on our money, and I never really, at least in the British context, I never really saw the point of the monarchy. Like, it was kind of like, you know, by the time I was a cool, quote unquote, cool teenager and in university, I was like, why do we need this, you know, institution? And we should. But on the other hand, I had a soft spot. You know, I thought the Queen Elizabeth II acquitted herself very admirably, given what, you know, the pressures of the gig for 100 years. You know, she was, and I mourned that I was there at when the Queen died. I went and visited the Buckingham Palace. By the way, a week or two before Mahsa Amini was killed. Remember that was the big news, was the death of the Queen, and then the Iranian uprising, unrelated, started. But, you know, I watched The Crown. I've met Will and Kate when I hosted Canada Day events, and they were there and stuff. Charles seems like a decent dude overall, but I watched 5 minutes of this, and I was just like, oh, you've got to be kidding. It would kill me to watch. You'd have to, I don't know if you could pay me to watch this.
Yeah. There was one thing, you know, I mean, I didn't watch it, so I don't know. I'm not saying this firsthand experience of watching it or anything like that. But from everything that I read, there was all of this talk, an attempt to incorporate like diversity and inclusion and sustainability.
Right. The new royal
and,
family.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this modern take on the monarchy. And, you know, at first glance, you're kind of thinking, you're like, okay, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But then you look into it and then you realize that it's just reduced to simple symbolism. And that's
Feels
it.
manufactured.
Exactly. I mean, you know, this is the first time that there was a diverse ceremony. Now, to be fair, the last coronation was in 1953. So you would imagine that, you know, this is obviously going to be a little bit more diverse and modern. But there was religious leaders from different faiths. There were, you know, the clothing they chose was sustainable clothing, like all of these things. But at the core of it, it's still King Charles and Camilla sitting up there on their throne.
With the garish outfits and the hats, or the I don't know, what do you call that? Crowns, yeah. You know, it doesn't, it's not, to me, it's not, it doesn't, I feel bad because I know for some people this is really important, you know, and back in England, there's a real pride in some corners, you know, but to me, this is not a good example of why there should be monarchy in the world. It's like, what is all this money going to put on this ceremony for, for what, you know? And again, with the Queen, I kind of thought, well, she's an institution. She's been there for a century. You know, she's the through line of British life, all of this. But now it's Charles, and it's like, really what?
Not as well received.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to feel. Are you feeling, back to you being Iranian, I was also feeling, again, with the essay today and stuff with the executions, and there's this tension between, quote unquote, moving on with life, you know, as so many people are doing or suggesting we do, and wanting to address and scream about what's going on in Iran. I mean, one of the things that we have to be, as we segue into the Roqe Roundup here, I'm going to ask you, I know you've got a couple of items you want to talk about. I assume one of them is the executions.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's weird because the things that, and I tried to intimate this in my essay just now, but the things that we were outraged about, like we were calling on the world to, and to be fair, there are still people doing this. There are even opposition leaders, whatever, out there every day trying to, you know. But the things that we were so outraged about 4 or 5 months ago, and, you know, this is desperate, and we need our governments to talk about this, and we need to be in the streets. Those things are still happening, or worse. And
we're not as outraged.
Well, I'm sure people are outraged in their hearts.
Well, collectively,
but
we're not
in terms of expressing it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of this fucking disillusion of the so-called opposition leaders and all the, you know, this person unfollowed this person on Instagram, all that nonsense. You know, I don't know if that has to do with cutting it off at the knees, but in terms of the diaspora, and again, full respect to those people who are still going out to the marches and still people, but the stuff's still going on in Iran, and this is, you think, wow, this is exactly what they wanted. The regime was like, well, let's just wait long enough, you know, the people get tired, and then, you know, of protesting or having an issue, and then we'll you know, prosecute the kind of crackdown that we've always known we were going to, terrify the shit out of everybody, kill anybody who's a dissenter. I mean, it's morose. So okay, so what do you have for the roundup in terms of the executions?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, you know, we obviously talked about those 2 young men who were executed, Yusuf Mehrad and Sadrullah Fazeli-Zareh, who were executed on the 8th of May, so just a couple days ago.
3 days ago?
3 days ago, yeah. And this came actually just days after the execution of Habib Chab on May 6th, who was the former leader of the Arab struggle movement for the liberation of Ahvaz. So, I mean, it's evident that the Islamic Republic is on this almost killing spree. I mean, not that they haven't been before, but in the form of executions, one after another, we've been seeing this. But I want to take a moment and actually not focus on the executions themselves, but instead focus on, I guess, a byproduct of what's been happening as a result of these executions, which is a new social media campaign that's been launched on Twitter. So I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a hashtag that's been kind of spreading and actually gone pretty viral over the last little while. The English translation being "We are all together," or in Farsi "Mohammed Baham Hassim," has been retweeted about 300,000 times, and this is just up until mid-Wednesday.
Nice.
It's still, you know, kind of making its rounds.
What is it a reference to, Mohammed? We are all together.
So the concept is that we are all together against the regime and calling for an end to these atrocities, including the executions, and in particular the executions and this new killing spree that the Islamic Republic is on. So, you know, what you were saying about that sense of feeling defeated, I think something like this has sparked that sense of, I don't want to call it hope, but I mean the sense of unity maybe again, hopefully. Yeah. So, I mean, as horrible,
renewed energy for dissent.
Yes, exactly. So as horrible as these executions are and have been, you know, maybe that's the silver lining.
By the way, I was talking to somebody last night. We have to also remember that a lot of what the regime has done cumulatively over the last few months, like we've talked about this on Rook. I was talking to somebody who has a large following in social media, and they were saying, like, well over I don't know, some crazy figure, 90% of their posts and things like that, people in Iran cannot see.
Wow.
Like there's that continued suppression of, as we speak right now, we know that for a lot of folks in Iran, if you're listening to us and we have a big audience in Iran, it's because you have a VPN or you've figured out some way around things. And there's been more crackdowns on some of the major VPNs and things like that. So there's all kinds of things at work that are, besides the divisions that maybe are also fostered by the Iranian government, that are suppressing things. But that is energizing to hear about. Hashtag campaigns are hashtag campaigns for what they're worth, but it's energizing to hear about that. The other thing that I thought was energizing, I presume you're going to talk about, is the news out of Sweden the last few days.
Exactly.
Which is that finally it seems that a Western government has taken upon itself to really make a statement in terms of passing an edict, a law around addressing the IRGC. So tell us what happened in Sweden.
Yeah, so the Swedish Parliament voted in favor of designating the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization, unanimously, actually, on May 10th, so just yesterday. The vote came in at 349 to 0. So it was incredible to see that the efforts of, so many Iranians who have been lobbying for this finally paid off. And it's actually going to be, or I think it is, an incredible first step for the rest of the international community, because this is going to be seen as, a move by a country like Sweden. It will have direct impact on other countries in Europe and everywhere else in the world. So, we've seen lobby efforts from Iranians in the diaspora. We've seen Vahid Beheshti, we've seen Alireza Akhundi, who's actually a Swedish politician and one of the individuals who had kind of been at the forefront of this. So definitely it was amazing to see
this is still something that Canada hasn't done.
Exactly.
Right? And the big call for European countries to do this, the hunger strike in the UK was to get the UK to be the first chip to fall, to put the IRGC on the terrorist list. So this is it's pretty major news, and I thought it was really heartening, that whatever we think in terms of the momentum of especially in the diaspora of the quote unquote revolution, that obviously doesn't just happen in Sweden. That's the product of so much work being done on the ground there in the parliament, by people lobbying to make sure this happens. Some of the Swedish MPs we've had, Azadeh Rojhan was part of that. She was on the show last month, who've been working hard at this. It makes a big difference, and it makes a big statement, and thank you, Sweden.
Yeah, exactly.
For taking that step.
Now, if we could only get the UN to also start making the
Didn't
right
the UN
decisions.
Appoint
well,
some,
that's exactly where I was leading. Yeah, so
thought we were ending on the roundup on a positive note.
I was going to, but
All
then
right,
I forgot that we didn't talk about this, and I was just so taken aback by this. I can't not bring it up. The UN just announced that the Islamic Republic was appointed as the chair of the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum, which is. It just boggles my mind. So this year, the theme is going to be technology and promotion of human rights. And someone somewhere decided that the person or the country that would be most
naturally
fitting for this role would be the Islamic Republic of Iran, who is currently on a killing spree executing its people. Yeah. I mean, I just thought this was a joke, a sick joke, honestly.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one wants to laugh and one wants to cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Pegah.
Thank you.
We're coming to you on rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. If you want to see some visuals with Rook, switch over to YouTube. If you like your Rook descriptions and bulletins. By the way, if you want to see the full interview with Satine, who is in our studio on Monday, it's up on YouTube right now.
Yes.
If you're in Toronto, Ottawa, or Montreal, you can catch Satine in the next few days. Actually, I think her show in Toronto is tomorrow night. But the full interview, her first major interview, I like to call it a major interview, her first long-form interview in English, was in our studio earlier this week, and it is available now in its entirety on YouTube at our Rook Media channel. If you like your Rook descriptions and bulletins in English and in Persian, check us out on Telegram. And if you would like to support us, which we would really appreciate, you go to our website, roqemedia.com, press the Support Us button. It takes you to our Patreon page, or you can just go to Patreon if you're familiar with it, patreon.com/rookmedia. To become a Rook member, it's a few dollars a month to become one of our subscribers, who make you a Rook member, and it goes to supporting what we do, and we really appreciate that, right?
Yes, we do.
All right. Let's get to our first guest. She is walking into the studio. Thank you again, Pegah.
Thank you.
Come on in. There has been no shortage of loss for Iranians and the Iranian community in recent years, and particularly in recent months. And with loss comes grieving. But how do we recognize the process of grieving and work our way through it to recovery? My first guest today is an Iranian-Canadian grief recovery specialist based in Toronto. Mitra Mohamadzadeh is a member of the Ontario Association of Mental Health Professionals and the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. She is the founder of Growth Center Employment Programs and Coaching Services and the Academy of Change, where she helps newcomers and refugees to deal with the difficulties they're facing in a new country. Mitra was born and raised in Iran. She moved to Malaysia to pursue her studies in human resources development and obtained her PhD there. She emigrated to Canada in 2011, first to Vancouver, then to here in Toronto, and right now. Mitra Mohamadzadeh joins me in the Rook Studio. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm impressed with such a
with your resume.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
It's my honor to be here. Appreciate your effort, time to support community. Thank you.
You know, I want to ask you about grieving today. You know that how we should deal with it, how we can collectively empower ourselves through grief recovery. But first, I thought I would say, you know, you self-define as a strong, independent Kurdish woman. It's no secret that the Kurdish population of Iran have been on the front lines of the uprising against this Islamic Republic regime since last September and the killing of Mahsa Amini, also a Kurdish Iranian woman. Tell me about the resilience you've witnessed amongst the Kurdish people of Iran.
In one word or one sentence, because it's a lot. The most that I love to say, to congratulate them to be this much tough and never give up. Since we are kids, we see. For example, for myself, always my dad was telling me, you are a wild horse. And wild horse never train, you know. That's characteristics of wild horse in me, and all Kurdish people I can tell with the mountain and the geography situation that we are grow, it makes us to be more resilient and always stay strong on our belief and values to never give up.
And if it may be a surprise to some of us to see that kind of resilience month after month, year after year, it's probably not a surprise to you.
No, always. I said to my Kurdish community, Persian, all regardless of the gender, nation, age, but here we are talking about this specific behavior characteristic. I always say to them, it's the reality. It's like it's within our body, and we have hope. And even we don't give up. We know this part of time we need to recover.
Let me make it a little more personal, if I can, Mitra Jan, which is, I know, for example, you used to have long hair, and one of the reasons you cut it was in solidarity with Mahsa and with the women of Iran. Tell me how you have processed the events of the last 8 months in Iran.
It's been a lot, because 2 months before this beautiful, amazing, I call it amazing, happened, I know we lost, but for me, the world knows who is Iran. That's why I call it an extraordinary event.
Wow. You see it as positive.
Yes.
Even though the revolution is clearly not complete.
Yes.
Interesting.
Because imagine Jian. No one didn't know where is Iran. Even no one didn't know our songs, Surush, our Nowruz. People celebrated with our pain and sorrow. And every single person in the world now, they know where is Iran. Even they hadn't had an idea. Always, you know that I'm a big networker and I love people. Always I ask people, when they ask me, where are you from? I said, Kurdish, tiny part of Iran. They say, where? Iraq? Where? Are you Middle East? I know all of us won, but even though that's why I call it an extraordinary event, because people know in that part of world.
And even if they did know something about Iran before, they really know now, we would hope, that the people of Iran and the Iranians around the world are not the same as the government or regime of Iran.
As you know, I went to Iran after 15 years, and I had hoped to give my knowledge, my love to cross Iran, all poverty areas of Iran, about the grief. And the second year that I went, and I had 1,000 of publish of the grief recovery steps. The first night I dealt with those interviews, canceled all my seminars. It's very long story, but short. I got to Tehran with force because I had to go at a spa in Iran for an interview the same day. That was during Khomeini's anniversary. So I ran away.
So that was still in your blood, as you had to basically just escape Iran again, and then all of this is happening. I mean, you say it's been I understand, and actually I love the idea of seeing this as a positive in terms of the message it's sent, and I say it as the goalposts have moved. You know, the work that's been done in the last 8 months, you can't roll it all back as hard as the regime will try. But it also has been a time of great loss, and you're someone who, I'm going to start asking you about grieving, but you're someone who clearly feels that. When I've met you before, you seem like someone who has practiced at feeling the emotions of others. And so even from afar, as you're watching what's going on in Iran, it must be, as it has been for all of us, a difficult 8 months too, yes?
A lot. Even I feel it with every single of my cells, neurons of my brain, the pain and the amount of pain. So imagine, I was a grief specialist. Other people are not.
Yes.
And they don't have these skills.
Yes.
Even with these incredible skills, I was falling apart.
Yes.
My family went through a lot. My students, my team was falling apart. They went to the interviews. I lost the entire of 7 years. And my website, my every single things. And the most painful was labeled me, you are a American spa. They labeled me, you teach Irfan no Zuhur, which is very weird, the label. I was teaching them increasing self-awareness to be happy. However, with those amount of loss, for me, when Massa happened, I saw the light. I said, enough is enough. It's a great start for you, Mitra. I stand up. And I said, it's a time to give our voice to the world. 85 million of people over there are grieving. With lots of things. It's not only one thing or the rate of poverty, inflammation.
And you know, Mitra Jan, also, I mean, you as you say, you're a grief recovery specialist. You practice this, you teach this stuff. you coach this stuff. For those of us who are not, I think we underestimate maybe how messed up we all are, because you may know Tymaz Bagbani. She was here last week, and Tymaz was saying, we were talking about the lack of unity and the way this opposition leader thing has just dissolved into some weirdness, and she was saying, we have to understand and respect the level of frustration and anger that comes with not just everything that happened in terms of kids dying and all the tragedy and all that, but the expectations that were there for a little bit, entirely unrealistic, let's say, in retrospect, but the expectations that in 2 or 3 months this is going to be done and the regime will be gone and there's going to be freedom in Iran, and when that doesn't get realized, and when 7 or 8 months later we realize, well, actually this is going to take a long time and this is going to be a step-by-step process and there's going to be a lot more pain and heartache before anything happens, people are not taking that well, because it's emotionally, psychologically a lot to deal with, right?
Yes, a lot. And I like to add another point to this. In my experience and my expertise as a HR point of view, the biggest loss, even we will facing the huge, I visualize it, the huge loss in Iran about human development. They don't train to respect, to not discriminate, to not point at each other. The huge loss is that they don't have even leader to follow. That's why another loss is self-leading.
Yes.
People are not even able to manage their emotion and their thoughts.
Yes.
And always is a conflict emotion everywhere. True, yes.
You wanted to, by the way, I didn't do this off the top. You wanted me to mention, because you're generously doing this interview in English, a lot of the work you do is in Persian.
99%.
A lot of it. You wanted me to mention that, first of all, I don't think it needs any mention. I think your English is great.
Thank you.
And you're very eloquent. But you wanted me to mention that, in fact, you only started speaking English in your 40s, right?
Yeah, 42 when I came Canada. From 42 to 45, I was lost at middle of nowhere. I couldn't barely even speak a word of English. I was an ESL student, and they said to me, fill up the form to level. I said, I don't have anything.
Right.
Then he said, okay, you know hi and bye. I said yes, and then asked me to write. Still, it's a joke for me that I didn't know bye is a B-Y.
How did you spell bye?
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know how to. Did you spell it some other way?
Yeah,
B-Y-E, B-U-Y?
No, like, B and I.
Oh, well, that also exists, like, bisexual, maybe. Well, anyway, yes, here you are doing an interview in English.
I appreciate it.
So one of the things you do in your work is to work with people who are grieving. And the goal is, as I understand it, grief recovery. You do grief coaching. So on your site, you say, for example, you have to let go and move on, but they don't say how. How do you do this? The grief recovery method teaches you how to regain your balance back. So very briefly, first of all, just to set the scene, what does grief recovery mean?
Mm-hmm. First of all, grief. What is grief? It's the result of pain and sorrow. Every single one experienced the death of beloved. The society has taught us just we grieving since we are dealing with the loss of beloved or divorce or broken relationship, and never talk anymore about it for other staff. To this specific technique, we said grief is a normal reaction. Our body has a reaction to any change. Now, in Iran is a revolution. Our body shows reaction to this change, the amount of change. So, back to the technique, I'm an advanced specialist and trainer and train people to be facilitator, grief coach in our academy. We have 40 types of grief that we are dealing per day, and we are not aware of it.
When you use the word recovery, it suggests that there's another option. In other words, if you don't do the right work, if you don't engage in the recovery, is it possible that you live with the grief, the pain forever?
Yes, it's with us. My job is to normalize it. In Farsi, we say that qarib, stranger. No one pay attention to this amazing feeling, always neglected. It comes to your life to talk about it. Let me to tell you how it works.
Sure.
Because it's a very heavy topic. I usually run a workshop, 2 hours, just to introduce the technique. Because every single one, I am one of those that always run away from the pain, sorrow, and talk about it. Always I was in a dark room, dark side, no talk about it. Always I was isolated.
Is it basically like it needs to, if you don't purge it out somehow, if it doesn't come out, it stays within you? It's almost like a. I've thought of. Forgive me, I cut you off. I'll let you finish the story. But I've sometimes thought about grieving. Maybe it's because I learned this from therapists. But I think about grieving almost like a really, 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 really bad stomach ache, or like when you have something, you've eaten the wrong food, you have to purge the food out. You're not going to feel perfect afterwards. You may never feel perfect again, but it has to come out somehow. And if you don't do the grieving, then and we hear about this, that person suppresses their emotions, they're living with grief. So you were saying you spend the first couple of hours just introducing people to the idea of grief, and go ahead.
Exactly. I like the way you said it, Jian John. Grief, it's like invisible backpack. Since we were kids, like a snowflake. The snowflake, during time, you said, when you have an invisible pack, a backpack. Did I say that correctly? Backpack. Since we were kids, we compared, we judged, we analyzed. از دختر خالت یاد بگیر. داداش یاد بگیر. Look at other people. You just, those little rock, you put them in this invisible backpack, and you are unknowingly carry it. I had one. When it's done, you can't carry it. That is the things you said give you a stomach ache.
Yes.
And for the snowflake in your life, all of a sudden I left this. The avalanche come. That little tiny snowflake. Carry the pain.
It turns into an avalanche. What happens if you don't get rid of the invisible backpack? What does it do to you?
To me, it's back to 2018. How much my invisible backpack was heavy.
You were an immigrant. You had to leave your country. You had experienced personal loss.
With a teenager son. With the family, I was the only Kurdish woman in entire my family that I had all those taboo by myself. Was not easy job.
And you got into a series of car accidents, more than one.
Well, yes, true.
And so you're carrying all that. And first of all, I know you end up working with grief specialists who help you get out of that. What would have happened to you if you hadn't got rid of that backpack?
Exactly. With the all amazing dear friends of psychologists, therapists, counselors, life coaches, all with those, they were temporary help me with the medication. I was taking Xanax and citalopram for just stand up and push myself for my daily work. But with those, the ending up was like all other people, like the dear our youth that we had suicide just yesterday. Like all other amazing people that ending up with the suicide, I decided for the voluntary departure. It was very heavy for me. I was done, Jian.
You were going to take your own life?
I went to my, fancy way of the suicide. I'm sure you have heard about the departure voluntary. It was my job in the Ontario Society of Seniors to teach the families who has seniors that long they are in rehab and they are above 5 years under the in a coma and it costs. My job was to train them with the organization. I was trainer to help them to make them satisfied, to help to
euthanasia, take their lives. Yeah.
That made me came to my mind, okay, I can take euthanasia for myself. Wow. It's done. I'm
so even with all your background, human resources, PhD and all of that
and imagine I was top first Iranian that I got candidate for top 75 successful immigrants in Canada, and when they called me, I said, no, it's a wrong number. I'm not. I'm a simple woman. I'm just serving shelters and my society, immigrants who can candidate me. And then I said, oh, no, it's me. Even though with those, all with Academy of Change.
Were you in touch with your family in Iran?
Those days, it was difficult time for me. Was somehow in my personal relationship, my husband was not coming to us. My family, I have a big family, sibling, yes, but you know, they call it Abru in Iran. It was big deal for them. I was
status and shame.
Rejected.
They were, yeah. And you have a famous brother. I mean, were you talking to Navid?
Yes.
Were you in touch with him? I mean, I'm just thinking how you know.
Navid, it's Omid, Sarah, my sibling, my heart, my twin sister Minu. But, you know, I was not this Mitra because those days I didn't know grief. I was cover myself with I'm fine. I never tell them what's going on in my life.
Yeah. And I mean, I was going to ask you, this is a good segue. How good are we? And I almost ask it in an unfortunate, ironic way or a sarcastic way. How good are we in Iranian culture at grieving?
Zero. And it's pain.
Why are we so bad at that?
Because they haven't taught us. The society, we grow up with some belief system and with intellectual comment and religion comment. Whenever something's happen, they say to us, oh, it was your destiny. You need to be patient. You need to be strong. You need to give it a time. You need to replace your pain. Oh, you know what? God has better things for you to do. خدا واسه تو بهتر خواسته. I got accident. They said, oh, thanks God you are alive. It's money is money. Because we always minimize the pain and showing with intellectual comment that it's okay. But the reality, intellectual comment is like a milk. If it expires, would you drink it? No.
No.
Still, not only Iran, but also the entire of Middle East.
It's a funny thing because I'm sure most of the people listening who are Iranian especially will understand what you're saying, and there's a suppression of emotion, there's a suppression of pain. Everybody tries to look like they're fine or put it. But on the other hand, we also have very melodramatic funerals. I mean, where everybody's wailing, crying, and even I remember the juxtaposition growing up where I would go to a wedding of a sort of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, I remember one of my friend's mothers had died and they were playing When the Saints Go Marching In, and everybody was trying not to cry. And I thought, this is so fake. And on the other hand, at Iranian funerals, everybody was, if you're not crying and, showing a lot of emotion, you're considered, what's wrong with this person? So we have that demonstration
of show off.
But that's not real? That's not proper grieving?
It's yes and no.
Okay.
Because it's personal to me. To me, we have in Kurdish muye. We talk, but we have a lot to cut off our hair. We do the dirt and water all above our shoulder, our head. Still, some places they do. As a behaviorist,
a ritualized way
yes,
of
I look at that because I do behavior a lot and way above beyond my expertise. I study and I write a lot of article about different cultures, behaviors, how to deal with and how to react and act. It comes from cultural background of each area. For example, as you see, for capital punishment, in Kurdistan, we dance for it. In our family, I see very painful ritual because it's an opportunity for those people, in my point of view, to do grieving for themselves.
Okay.
And
that's good, right?
Yes, yes, because whenever you want to cry, they said don't cry. If you want to talk about your pain, she's negative. If you want to, who should I talk about my pain? Gham miyare, the grief bring more grief. And always some people stop you from express those feelings. And I was one of them, always buried my feeling. Whenever someone was dying, it was opportunity for me to get rid of all those cries. And as I see in society, every people do it, it's related with their own background. But in part of Tehran, for example, it's became very fancy in big cities. Mostly is like wedding show off, and we said morde parasti. When I'm alive, no one asks me, hey Mitra, what are you doing? Even though now.
I have to say, in my own family, my father died a few years ago, and
it's very unique.
We didn't know a lot. Oh, it's a terrible pain. I still feel it, but we didn't know everything that he wanted when he died, in terms of, stupid things like, not stupid, but just things like, what's the casket and where exactly are we going to bury him, and what is going to, and all of those decisions that you have to make, and you're making at the worst time, And the reason was, and I compare this to some of my friends who are, say, many generations in Canada, who have sat down with their parents and said, okay, where do you like to get buried, and what are you going to be? And in our family, it was all in harfar nazan, duraz jun, nobody's going to die ever. You shouldn't say these things, and which is, of course, unrealistic. As people get older, we need to have these conversations, but it almost seemed rude to talk about, to my dad about, well, what? So we never talked about it. So then he dies, and my poor mom has to say, and so we kind of have to guess what my father would even want in his death, because our rituals are to not suppress that kind of talk. Don't talk about it, Whereas, again, these other families have, at the age of 40, they've kind of gone, okay, well, this is the way Dad, what do you want when you die? I mean, we don't have those kind of conversations, But I'm guessing even when you talk about the grieving at the funeral that Iranians are allowed, that's not the entire grieving process. You can't do it all in one day or one 40-day period. And so the grief recovery is steps.
Recovery is this. We don't get rid of the events, the memories. We go step by step to recover, be better with what? Not forget the people. We go through the pain and sorrow of event, the way they called you, the way you were with your mom confused, the 40 type of loss. I felt it now. One of them, intangible loss, still you said he didn't know what he wanted. I wish I could ask them. Intangible losses always are within us, and always we bury them. We have a fear and phobias to talk about them.
When you talk about how Iranians are not good at grieving, that's particularly problematic because Iranians in general have had to deal with a lot of loss in recent decades.
Yes.
Tell me about some of which you've experienced yourself. Tell me about the ways and reasons you have seen Iranians needing to grieve in recent times, even if we don't do it properly.
Yeah. It was in 2018, the year that I got to know these amazing tools. Then I went to because I love research and articles, writing. I love to write. And then I went through all these little details of statistic, and I have found in 2020, Iran was the highest rank of the sadness countries. Even though before Corona, that was a huge, even that is globally. And then in Iran was the worst with
Isn't
that
that interesting?
situation.
We always wonder why all of our famous songs are sad songs.
Yes, true. And then the Gina, and then before Gina, the Metropole, the Abadan, a lot we had.
Yes.
I started with the crash of
752.
Yes.
Even before that, Alban.
Yes.
Navid Afkhari. It keeps going.
Yes. And then I researched and I thought, oh my God, that's why our people are not happy. They said they are always blaming. No, this country is something's going on. And then I talked with my grandmaster business coach and said, hey Mitra, think I was killing myself to speak English and present these things all in English. Then when I recover, I said I need to translate this and give this gift to the world.
But I should mention that one of the things I've learned from researching you, I haven't. I mean, I have to take the courses, but is that grief. We're talking about grief a lot here in terms of the loss of life.
Yes.
But there is a part of all those 40 dimensions of grief that you talk about. That I mean, your grieving comes from loss of freedom, loss of culture, loss
of faith, trust, confidence.
These are all things. Safety.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there for Iranians.
Types. All 40 types are in Iran. And by COVID, I said, someone needs to help this country. Because I was one of them that I went through the stages of grief. If you have heard, for sure, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross believed that I love her to the moon with her daughter Elizabeth. They have done a lot to the world, but I'm not agree with the society. They misconcept their theory. They applied it to every single lost. In reality, they said, yes, there is a 5 stage. First you deny, then you get angry, then you get bargaining, then you get depressed, then you have to accept. But, Jian, when I got cancer, and as probably you know in my story, I'm a survivor of colon cancer with, the cancer. And I went with those stage perfectly. They worked for me because I had to accept. But it doesn't go with all these things going on in Iran.
And when you talk about...
No.
And when you talk about us not having the tools to be able to get rid of the invisible backpack, you can, I guess, based on what you've been through and what you were just talking about in terms of where you were at 5 or 6 years ago, you can empathize with what we've been seeing, unfortunately, a lot in Iran. There's a lot these days. We've seen a lot of suicides.
Yes,
and young Iranians taking their own lives. Talk to me about the kind of desperation young people are feeling inside Iran that would lead them to take their own life, and the lack of tools for grieving, as you talk about, that leads to this.
Yeah. The biggest is they are facing unmet hope, unmet dreams, unmet goals. They are all over place. They lost the clarity, what's going on in their future. These things are very heavy. Beside those things, they have lack of no one respect them, lack of not being seen, not being heard. They compare, they are sick of taking steps, short-term relieving energy behaviors. Because when you want to balance, when you lose, you replace that loss with any disorder in food, in disorder to your sleep pattern, disorder in sex, disorder in making balance. You do things to make yourself balance with drug, with things. These are with cutting themselves. I have been through last 3 months with 11. I helped them. They healed. And I'm 1%. Everyone knows that I have a Gina 8 weeks program. It took 12 weeks by all my heart for 120 people free. And I do the best to introduce them this technique, to bring it.
Mitra,
to help our youth.
Yes.
It's a big concert for me.
What are we seeing when we see, and we saw this a few times in the fall, and I'm sure, unfortunately, very sadly, it's still happening, when there was the imprisonment of teenagers, and then when the teenagers would be released, so you would think, okay, they're back with their families now, they're going to be fine, then they would take their own life.
Exactly.
What are we seeing there? What is that?
Because the amount of their own loss is a lot. Because I have lived this, that I went by myself to my physician and asked for departure voluntary. When you hit that point, these were my feeling. For sure, when someone died, suicide and go for it, I said, oh my God. I felt that I'm done. I'm useless. I'm not enough. No one can understand who I am. I need to finish with my life, even though my husband will understand who I was. Always that moment you are seeking to prove yourself after you die. Because when you die, it's everywhere. Oh, suicide is a big happen. And it's not only that moment with that. And we don't know what's going on that's inside. You took me back in 1998. I was a good standing A in Mahallat, and two of my best close friends, they reported me and they caught me. I was there 2 nights, and I know how it could be inside. Also in 2000, they caught me in Shahsabar, and the way they treated us, oh my God. And every time I release with bail and with money, anyhow, to pay my lashes,
Yes.
my husband did it. But, still look, my heart beating. That's inside is dark. The way they treated you, no food with a dirty, oh my God.
Psychological tool.
Psychological tool. And you need to have a toughened muscle brain. They don't have these skills. It's like going to gym every single day. We made the muscle,
right.
but no one didn't taught us that our brain has muscle.
Yeah.
We
And
need
how
to toughen it.
how to get 85 million people living under the conditions in terms of the lack of freedom, and et cetera, to all be on that healthy page. This leads me, I guess, to the crescendo of our conversation and the $1 million question, which is that most people listening will be able to relate to. There are experiences of personal loss, the death of a family member, the breakup of a relationship, but then there are broader losses that we face as a community.
Collective loss.
This week, there were 2 more Iranian men executed, this time for having an opinion about religion, for just the freedom to think that they're not allowed. How should we collectively find a way to process that kind of loss?
I strongly believe and urge everyone to stand up and advocate mental health for them. Advocate these tools to teach them. We need a team to go live and talk more and more.
Mental health for who? For all of us.
For all of us. In Farsi. In Iran now. My master grand coach, what he said to me, that it stayed with me forever. He said, why, Mitra, you are killing yourself to learn English? We have this in 20 countries with 20 languages. You have 85 million Iranian.
Who desperately need it, yeah.
Even though those days was not even COVID, even though not this all going on. We need to ask people to advocate and train more train more facilitators to teach these tools. We are able to certify them. We are able to help them. Right now, at this moment I'm here, I have 12 grief coach that they are I have in Sweden, Maryam, I have 2, Sadaf and Sharzad in Alman for Iranian community.
But I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that the government, the regime of Iran doesn't help with mental health.
No.
Right. That doesn't surprise me somehow.
Yeah.
So.
And another thing I'd like to add,
yes.
Please, I invite all psychologists, therapists, counselors, coaches to add this technique, unique as fingerprint, like fingerprint, and no one understands the feeling and emotion of each other. And if we add this technique to their toolbox, as I have 2 amazing psychologists right now beside me and 2 therapists, I admire them. Sarah, Sadaf, Beheshte. Melika is the youngest grief coach for me in Iran. I
was going to ask you, are there a lot of people doing your kind of work inside Iran now?
Yes, they are under me.
They're under you?
Yes, because I train them.
You can't, but there needs to be a lot more than just people who work with you. There's 80 million people.
Yeah,
so
they are each of them in one part of Iran, 12 they are. And they do grief coaching. I mentor them to go steps exactly in a right path of the grieving.
What can an individual do? What can somebody who's listening right now, who wants to, I mean, other than take your courses, I guess,
Yeah.
what can they, what's the first step to dealing with their own grief, but also to trying to help the Iranian cause for, somehow dealing with this pain and trauma?
I love the question that you asked. First step, I know facing pain and sorrow has a fear. First steps, be responsible to go through yourself, deep breathe and look at each single person. Listen, my body, how much I do react to any changes. Because every single change has its own reaction, own loss. What are my feelings and what are my steps, my short-term relieving energy behaviors? If Jian says to me, oh, Mitra, at my workplace, something's happened, I'm not feeling good, I don't offer you, as people do, oh, let's go to bar and a glass of wine will make you relax. No. When someone say I'm sad, say I'm here with heart. We are, what I see the people? Just like iceberg. Just they see us a tip of it. 92%.
Yes.
It's in my inside. And say I'm fine. We are not fine. Start. Don't say I'm fine. I'm okay. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Let's talk and validate. We don't validate our anger, our pain, our guilt. We are, what I see the people? Just like iceberg. Just they see us a tip of it. 92%.
Yes.
It's in my inside. And say I'm fine. We are not fine. Start. Don't say I'm fine. I'm okay. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Let's talk. We are there to really just sit and talk about our feeling with partner, with kids, with work. It's a well-being. No phone. These days we even text each other in one home. I have a family of 3. They said we don't talk each other. If I talk to husband, just yelling. Their kids are upstairs. The kids, teenager says, "Oh, my mom is always in party or casino in somewhere with friends." Why? Because it's a stir. I don't label anyone. This is addiction. No. These are real sign that we are dealing with loss within ourselves.
I'm so grateful for your time
too.
today, and I'm sure the audience is as well. And I thank you for the work you do. I thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and your compassion and your passion. And I hope we can do it again.
Yes, sure. I will be there by all my means, because I love to give them specific steps. I'm sure they know how to watch themselves, how they react with their thoughts and emotion, validate with their anger, give them rate from 1 to 10. I don't want to see him anymore. No. Little part. Beshkanimesh, and then each single person has own steps. What are my steps? For me, I was workaholic. For me, it's in my channel, YouTube channel, 500 pair of shoes.
Yeah.
For what are yours? Just gathering and say, oh, I want to even please here. I don't please anyone because it's one of the steps. But in this case, is a very unique place. Write down Don't afraid. Just write down in a comment, what are your steps to break this wall of I'm fine. No one judge you. The beauty of these techniques and my community is we don't judge, we don't compare, we don't analyze each other. If something happened, I said, Jian, you know how much you are dear friend for me. But that behavior, that word you said, it hurt me. I want to talk you about just only that. It's just those amazing things, milestone that I'm sure they will stay forever with them for those that want to work on
You know, if you
them.
keep talking, I'm going to keep you here for 5 hours. It's
yes.
too good. I need to bring you back and talk about these things.
Thank you, sure.
خیلی متشکرم.
Merci.
مرسی از شما.
It's a blessing for me to be here, and we are going to finish it by a memory that when I was HR clerk in 2014 in city of Toronto, John 55, always I was walking and I was saying, oh, one Iranian is in CB. So one day, God, I will be there. And I'm so thankful that today I'm here and be a guest in your amazing studio, and
You're very
it's
kind.
blessing.
You're very
Merci,
kind.
Jian. Thank
Merci.
you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
This is Rook, episode 263, Grief and Recovery. Remember, for all things Rook related, you can go to our website, rookmedia.com, where we have a new Rook the Experts interview, a full video of it with Master Badri, the Taekwondo master. That's at rookmedia.com. My next guest today is an Iranian-Canadian rapper and soccer player who has a remarkable and inspiring story of resilience, overcoming the odds to fight for his life and his passions. Take a listen to this.
Looking for a change, yeah, trying to make sense. I just hopped in the range, yeah, maxed out the tents. Now I hopped in the game, yeah, popped up quick. Yeah, it took some time, but now I walk like this, yeah, talk like this, yeah, talk my shit, yeah, off the shit, yeah, on my list, yeah, hit up, miss, yeah, make it swish, yeah, heavenly, yeah, heaven sent. Got me looking for a change, yeah, trying to make sense. I just hopped in the range, yeah, maxed out the tents. Now I hopped in the game, yeah, popped up quick. Yeah, it took some time, but now I walk like this, yeah, talk like this, yeah, talk my shit, yeah, off the shit, yeah, on my list, yeah, hit up, miss, yeah, make it swish, yeah. I mean, by now, man, the progress should be evident. The flow is to heaven sent, the music is the medicine. You feeling like you got it, huh? Go ahead and tell them then.
There you go, a little taste of a track called Heavenly. That is the opening song and the title track from a new album of the same name by my guest here in the Rook Studio, Taimaz Bagbani. Taimaz was born and raised in the Toronto area. He was a talented young soccer player who was on his way to a professional career in soccer, but health challenges were to prevent the realization of those dreams. Taimaz was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 11 and has, quite frankly, a few times been told that he had only a few months to live. Now, after beating cancer 3 times and surviving different health issues, Taimaz has turned his passion for music and using rap lyrics to draw attention to cancer and to be an inspiration for others, which he is. He is an ambassador for Sick Kids Hospital here in Canada. And right now, Taimaz Bagbani joins me in the Rook Studio. Hello, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
We have a bit of history. I've known about your story for a long time.
No, for sure. I remember I was a kid. You should come to the events. Like, it was a lot. Thank you for your help back then as well.
Taimaz the Warrior.
Let's go.
That's you. That's you. And by the way, Taimaz is, I was actually asking the crew here whether that's a Persian name, and they were kind of saying, we don't know a lot of Taimazes. It's Turkish, right?
Yeah, it's Turkey. It's a Turkish name. It's Taimaz literally means Bihamta, unique warrior, and I couldn't think of a more fitting name for myself. That's why I kept it for my artist name.
It really
as well.
does sound like it's your rap name. Yeah. Like your name is like Fashid or something, and you went with Taimaz for your rap name. Tell me about that song, Heavenly.
Heavenly is like, it's probably my favorite song on the album, personally. That's why I named the album after it too. I made it. And it's like, it just puts me in a good mood. I feel like it can put anybody in a good mood. I'm talking about my story, but the way I'm like floating and scheming over the beat, it's I think it's a really great song, and it shares my story, I think, the best.
It quite literally is your story. And if you didn't have that as your title track, I would almost feel reticent about, bringing you on here and asking about your story, because it's something that defines you to a certain extent, but it also doesn't define you. You are not only your health issues. Are you comfortable talking about what you've been through?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always open with what I've been through, because I know that a lot of other people are dealing with it. Like, cancer is a universal thing. Doesn't matter what age you are, what religion you are, what race you are. It affects everyone, and I feel like if I share my story, I know I have a positive impact, and I can give hope to other people that are fighting through it right now. Yeah,
and you are an inspiration. I mean, you're this kid who was a talented soccer player from a very young age. You first get diagnosed with leukemia at age 11, right?
Yeah.
How does that happen? What happens to you? How do you even find out you have leukemia?
So, like since the age of 5, I played in the highest levels of Canada with all the top teams. So, always a very athletic kid, perfect shape. And then, one day, just like my mom noticed, like mother's instincts, like at a physical training session, I'm just not running as fast as I was as before. And then took me to a doctor. They said, oh, my lower, like family doctor, my iron's a little bit low, typical stuff. But then went for a blood test, and I was getting like some bruises on my body as well. That's like when you have low platelets. So I went for a blood test at Sickest Hospital. And basically I had like no cells, and I was like in my whole body, and I was like training. Even if I did like a header, I could have got like internal bleeding. Like from that, and then they right away, like within 1 week, diagnosed.
I mean, that's a lot for an 11-year-old to process, let alone anybody in their life. What was the story has become this one of resilience, but what was your initial reaction as a kid when you hear this news?
At the age of 11, you don't have too much of you just hear like cancer. It's just like a word, it's something a lot of people hear. But me at that age, to be honest, like the only thing my thoughts was soccer. Get back on the field. This is just taking it away from that. Just soccer, really.
So you beat it. You do chemotherapy. Your cancer goes into remission. Mm-hmm. You're such a good player that you end up, by the age of 14, you're in Spain, working with a junior, like a team. Like basically, you're on track for a professional career, right? And then the cancer returns. Tell me about that.
No, actually, even that was after the second time.
Okay.
I moved to Spain. So.
That's right. You've been through cancer twice, and you go to Spain, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a transplant. 10 months after my first bone marrow transplant and second battle with leukemia, I moved alone at 15 to Malaga, Spain. I was on trials with clubs there, and then only like a month and a half in there, I relapsed again.
First of all, how is that even possible that you that you beat cancer twice and that you can go and play with the Malaga team?
That's even like here. I would get chemo and I would go to training sessions, like, and I would even sometimes I wouldn't tell coaches what's going on, and like, because I didn't want people to like treat me differently or like oh, go a little easier and stuff. Like, I always put myself out there, and like, I'm good, man. I was a good player.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, I have a great passion for football, for soccer. I live and die by Arsenal, by the way.
I saw that, Gunner.
Yeah. So don't say anything about it. If you're a Man U fan, don't tell me, okay?
No, I like.
Okay.
I'm a Barca fan, but Arsenal's my Premier League team.
Okay, all right. See, we're going to get along just fine.
Yeah.
All right, that's right. Thierry. I mean, soccer is something that Persians are very passionate about in general. How, if you can tell us, I mean, without any modesty or taaruf, just go ahead. How good were you at your best?
Basically, all these guys on Team Canada right now, we played on the same teams.
You trained with them when you were a kid.
Same camps, like all of them, like on TFC. Ask them how good I was, I was out here, and I'm a number 9. That's why I'm like, time was 9. It's like Golzan, like, and you could just see by my character, like, it's the same thing. I express myself, like, I feel like nobody's want it as much as me. I love soccer. That's it. Just me and a ball in a park 6 hours a day. Anybody that's loves something that much is gonna be very good at it.
So now you're in Spain. You're 14 years old. You figure you've actually you've beaten this twice now, and you really are on track. It's not a pipe dream. You're good enough to be playing in the Premier League or whatever eventually. What happened at that point when you hear about this diagnosis the third time?
My first thought, I promise, wasn't I'm gonna die or I'm gonna like something like that. It's, I can't be a soccer player anymore, because now I'm like 16. Another battle. Like my body's been through like too much. Like to be soccer, you have to be like not just good. You have to be like elite athlete. Like there's levels to it. And like I just knew at that point, like that's what crushed me. I was like, I'm in Spain. I'm about to in trials with all these things. And now I got to go straight from there to Sickest Hospital and do another.
And I just even think about, I mean, it really breaks my heart, man. I mean, I love that I'm sitting here with you. You look great now. Yeah, but just the idea of you in your mid-teens with all your talent having to get on a plane and come back here, the level of frustration that you must have felt, the level of heartbreak at knowing, as you say at that point, that you have to give up your dreams. Not only that, but I mean, doctors at that point are saying this is a death sentence, right?
100%. They didn't even want to give me treatment. They were just saying it's going to do more harm than good. Me and my mom had to go to the boards and like fight for it.
Wow.
Yeah. I was given 6 months, 8 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
So a doctor actually said it's not worth doing it?
They just thought, they don't do that. They thought it would do more harm than good, because the body has already done one transplant. I've been through chemo twice. They're like, what else are we going to do? We already tried everything. And like, you should just enjoy your time. Why would you want to spend like your last time getting the most hardest treatments and like killing your body? And we just refuse to accept it.
Well, I'm going to ask you about your resilience, and that's kind of the theme of this interview, obviously. But we have to talk about your mom, because we know Persian moms are tough. Mm-hmm. But your mom, and you've talked about your mom's advocacy, tireless activism for you. Tell us a bit about her and what she has done for you.
Yeah. She's the strongest person I know in the world, to be honest. Like, there's no chance of me being here looking like this, making music right now if it wasn't for her. We're a team. When we're together, nothing can beat us.
Yeah, and she was the one who spearheaded campaigns for, bone marrow, all of that, right?
Yeah, that's how I feel like you probably got familiar at that time when I was looking for the first bone marrow transplant. My father was helping as well. They had over 100,000 people join the job bank, and most of them were also Iranians, because for a bone marrow match, it's better for the same community. Yeah. So that's how I feel like you. And
by the way, it's amazing that you found that. Mm-hmm. We have a sad story of a doctor who I had interviewed a couple times on this show, who died last year because he couldn't find the stem cell, the bone marrow that he needed. Mm-hmm. Because it's very hard, because there's no directory in Iran. So it's a kind of a lottery, right, to find the right bone marrow.
Yeah, and that's why I encourage anybody watching this right now. It's just a simple mouth swab. That's it. You could save somebody's life.
Yeah.
And it's not a surgery to do it. It's like you go do it. Literally, you're saving. I'm here today because somebody did that.
It's always the thing, when people say race doesn't matter, like it's one world, everybody's, what's the difference between this is where race actually does matter. Yeah. The fact of the matter is our cells, if I have this correctly, are more likely going to be found amongst Iranians by a long shot than amongst any other group, right? That's because that's our lineage.
Yes, our lineage, our bloodline, our DNA. That's why, even though with the things I have, the physical things that happened to me later on, was because the match wasn't as close as possible.
Right. Just before I leave the topic of your mom, just tell me the kind of, when you say we're a team, so you're sitting somewhere and a doctor is coming. I mean, I was reading that doctors were telling you, for example, that you're even beyond the death sentence. They were saying, which is about as bad as it gets, but they were saying you're never going to walk again, for example. Mm-hmm. What are the kind of conversations that you and your mom would have?
My mom made a promise to me. She's like, Taimaz, I brought you here. You're going to walk out of this hospital, And she kept her promise for me. And just conversation. She's like, this happened. It's just, she believes in me and she gave me my strength, and she just made promises to me and she kept her promise. She kept her word.
Wow. And I'm guessing that you probably played that role for her at times, right?
Yeah, I hope. But like, I'll be honest, my mom is strong. She doesn't need no one.
Wow.
Yeah.
The story is that during COVID was actually when you stopped needing a wheelchair, which is kind of ironic. Everybody else is fleeing this illness, and you're suddenly freeing yourself. Tell me about the moment when you begin to be able to walk again.
Yeah, so I spent 6 years in isolation, going through everything, and fighting so hard to get back to regular life. And right when I got back to regular life, the world goes into this isolation. You know, so like 2022 is the summer I got my life back. And then I've been walking 2 years, driving, doing everything regular, man, you know, out here trying to get it. And then, so it was a process, right? Everything is a process. I went from, people go from like crawling to walking to running. I went from crawling to walking to running to wheelchair to walker to cane to walking to running. You know, it's like it's a different path. And then I always knew I was going to do it. And I just had to keep going at it.
Okay, that's what I got to ask you about. And I don't even know if you know how to put this into words, but your resilience, look, there's a choice when we face these great crises in life. It's succumb or surmount. You succumb and you give up and you say, okay, well, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to resort to alcohol, or I'm going to, escape somehow, or I'm going to take my own life. Or you surmount. You say, no, I'm going to. You were so heavily on the surmount side, and I mean, doctors all the way. If from the reports that have been done on you, one thing doctors have been getting right is that they say that you've beaten these 3 bouts of cancer and other health issues because of your drive to get better. In other words, there's only so much the medicine can do. Mm-hmm. The person themselves needs to be pushing hard to. Tell me where that strength comes from in you.
It's just, exactly like how you were saying, there's fight or flight. I feel like all my cells are exactly like me. It's just fight. There's no flight. And then the strength just comes from, because I just believe in myself. I knew, like, I'm confident in, like, my talent. Like, that's how I can say it, try to be humble. But, like, I just know I'm destined for a lot. And, like, that wasn't the path for me. Like, my life wasn't to be in a wheelchair, to be in a bed sick my whole life. I'm like, I got a lot to offer, and I'm out here and I'm going to do it.
So all that time when you are sitting in the bed, that isolation you just talked about, you're telling me there were no moments in there where you were just like, fuck this. I mean, I can't fight anymore.
What is that going to solve, right? Like, yeah, for sure.
Well, nothing, but it would be understandable.
Yeah, you have good days, you have bad days. It's just, you got to keep going. That's it. It's just keep going. It's like, even in the line in Heavenly when I rap, it's like, you can't lose if you never give up, right? So like, you just keep going. It's like anything is like pressure, right? You're gonna apply the pressure, or the pressure applies on you. And if you keep applying pressure, something's got to give eventually, right? It's either you're gonna give, or what you're trying to get is gonna give.
Good for you, man. Well, tell me about the lowest point. If I say what was the absolute lowest? Was it when you were 11? Was it coming back from Malaga? Was it which diagnosis? I mean, when did you really kind of, for you, hit rock bottom?
That was it was say it's not even the cancer. Like, it's the what the transplant did. It was the wheelchair. It was the losing my independence. It was losing my range of mobility. It was being in the bed. Just like, how did I go from being a professional soccer player in Spain to not even be able to go to the
Yeah.
That's just like in your bed, you have those thoughts, and then it's just like, all right, like, this is just my story, and it's like, when I do this, then they're gonna know,
Do you have some form of self-talk, or some way of getting yourself out of moments when you feel really frustrated?
Yeah, I'm always in my head, like, that's even with lyrics and what I write. The music is like, it's expressing myself, it's how I'm feeling, and like, put it out there. And yeah, I give myself a look in the mirror. I'm Tymaz the warrior. Like, this is nothing for me. Anytime I come in here, even before this interview, hype myself up, It's just, you have to be like that. You gotta cheer for yourself. You gotta do it all for yourself,
Now, you're a kid of the diaspora like me. You grew up, born and raised outside of Iran. But I think most of your family is in Iran, right?
Yeah.
Do they know about, I mean, anybody associated with you should be incredibly proud of your story. Has this rippled to? I mean, I know there's people listening right now in Iran, but how much do you know about people knowing of your story who are inside Iran?
Yeah, I get a lot of people from Iran. They show love because it's like you just connect with different people because you could feel, oh, this person is out here and he's doing this and he's from the same place as me. It's different. Like Persians, connect with Persians. It's just different. I've done like Manitou. I just did that recently. I've done, even when I was like doing my bone marrow transplants, types of things, they were like helping me a lot. I was on Navad. They shared me, so I've been like in there, and then I guess they're just like, wow, this guy really came out of it, and like, look at him now, like with the kid that we were trying to help with bone marrow transplants and all this. I was out here.
I mean, to look at you and hear, you rap and stuff. You seem like a urban Canadian Toronto rapper, hipster kid. How Irani are you at home?
Yeah, like even me and my dad, he still his English not the best. We gotta talk in Persian. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You talk in Persian at home?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my mom is good, but like, yeah, my dad is different. And then like. But yeah, I'm like I was in Richmond Hill, North York. A lot of Persians here too. It's like it's different soccer. For sure, I'm Irani. Mitra Mohamadzadeh,
At World Cup time, when there's no controversy around politics, who are you, Team Melli or Team Canada?
I like both. For sure, growing up, like, I was Team Melli because Canada when we were kids, we looked at it like a joke. To be honest, all the ballers in the city. Now it's like a different now. The kids growing up are like, whoa, their dream is to play for Team Canada. And that's like a big thing for this team. So it's a historic team that they just did in the World Cup. But yeah, like I like Iran because they love soccer and I love it, so I can feel the passion in there. It's like, so yeah, it's Team Melli.
It's funny enough, you probably, had you become a professional soccer player, you could have actually played maybe for Team Melli or Team Canada, right?
Yeah, that was the thing for Team Melli is because I know if you do something for Team Melli, like you win the World Cup, you win something for them, you're going to be a king, they're going to love you. Iran will love it.
Tell me about the passion for music and rap. You say you're obsessed by it. What has music given you?
Music is just another chance to compete, So like that's me. It's just I'm a very competitive person, and it's like now I can't really do sports like that. It's like on a fair level. Music actually is like even playing field. Now it's like Mike. It's like doesn't matter your healthy body. It's like what are you saying? What have you been through? What's your message? What music? So that's why I love it. I can press myself and I can compete.
Did you know you were a good rapper? Like when did this? Because you seem like, to listen to you, it sounds like you've been doing it for years. I know you're a fan of Drake, but I mean, when did that begin for you?
Yeah, so like I always had a lot of like I feel like talents I didn't like tap into just because soccer was just soccer. Everything was soccer until I was like 16, 17, and then first I got into battle rap while I was in the hospital. I was watching like that and then I just got fascinated. I like.
Battle rap is what? That's when two people are
like no
freestyling
beats,
against each other?
No beat, no nothing. It's just straight lyrics. Like who can have the best lyrics, and that's how you like win the battle. And growing up, like for like I would write a little poem maybe like going like that. I would have it, but I just never really tapped into that side until I had the time. And then I got into battle rap, got obsessed with lyrics. I got into that, and then like I was like I can actually write, so let me try music, and then made music, and now we're doing it.
I was going to ask you what it means to be an ambassador for sick kids.
So yeah, that's something I always from the beginning I knew I would do it because they did so much for me. So I'm working right now with Sick Kids Hospital and Holland Bloorview. It's the biggest children's rehab center in Canada. So basically any kid with a disability. So when I was in a wheelchair, that's where I was doing a lot of my physiotherapy. I stayed there for 6 months, and I actually just did we were working on like a video game for the apps where kids can work on their mobility, and like my section in this, I'm teaching them how to move through rap. So they're gonna learn a little bit of that and the lyrics. I just shot the last week, and yeah, it's an ambassador because people go through a lot, and like it's important for them to see that you can come out of it and make something positive of yourself.
You gotta, at this point, especially as an ambassador for sick kids, you gotta be meeting kids who are you 10 years ago, an 11-year-old who's just been diagnosed with something or who is in the hospital. What do you tell them?
This too shall pass, It's like, this is like, just things happen. Can't explain why now. Maybe later on you will understand. It's just, you can't give up, and it's a hard time, but, they give you that because you're a strong guy. You can handle it, You're going to come out of it. I promise, just keep your head strong, positive mindset. You can accomplish anything.
Before I let you go, I always feel like somebody like you must have so much wisdom because you're still in your early 20s, but you've just lived many lives. You've lived through a lot more adversity in some cases. And by the way, as you get older, you realize that everybody has complex lives in different ways, right? But you've certainly had major challenges. What would you say you've learned about life and how to approach each day?
Yeah, like every day you have a choice. You can choose. I want to have a good day or I want to have a bad day. Everything is a consequence of choice. So, and a consequence of choice can be positive in the same way it can be negative. So if you make the choice to, start my day with a walk, get sunlight, do it, put myself in, listen to good music, you can make it. And it's just, everything rolls off that. So I feel like, yeah.
That's I really believe that as well. But it's hard to do.
100%.
I believe everybody in the world has a choice every morning, and I could find anybody and give them 10 reasons why their life is amazing and 10 reasons their life is shit, and they have to choose, and that's going to be their day. But it's hard sometimes when you get beaten down,
for sure,
to make that choice, to the positive choice.
Yeah, everything's perspective, right? Even with this interview, I feel like somebody will see this, be like, this kid went through that, what am I complaining about, right? And then they're going to make their choice to change their thing. And that's why it's important, right? Inspiration comes from a lot of different avenues.
It's great to see you, man. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being the inspiration you are. You're a pillar of strength. Taimaz the warrior. I love having you in the studio. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
It's Tymaz Bagbani here in the Rook Studio. Thank you again. This is full time for Rook for today. Remember, for all things Rook related, you can go to our website, rookmedia.com, where you can also become a Patreon member. Press the support us button. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Talented Anahita, Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Savvy Roham, Bearded Omid. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already on any or all of our platforms. And to watch the video versions of these interviews, go over to our YouTube channel or check us out on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. In the meantime, as ever, Mizun Bashi.